it's John, True Vintage Guitar, coming to you from Birmingham, Alabama with the results of a guitar safari that I went on back in May. I had another one to post for you guys last week. It was a guitar safari to Abilene, Texas, to buy a 1957 Fender Telecaster guitar. It was from the widow of the original owner. It was an unreal instrument. But I took my cameras along and had a camera malfunction halfway through, so I was not able to get all the footage that I needed to post a video of that. I'm so sorry, I really tried, but I couldn't make that one work. I did blast it out on Instagram, so you guys following on Instagram probably saw it. But if you didn't, if you want to follow on Instagram for guitar safaris and cool guitar content, hit me up at True Vintage Guitar. I'd love to follow you back, so leave me a comment with your Instagram, and I will do that. I'll follow you back. But yeah, this guitar was from 1957, and this lady ordered it for her husband, brand new. He was a guitar player. He had a 1948 Martin D28. He was kind of a country player. And she wanted to surprise him for his birthday in the late 1950s with a new guitar, so she ordered this guitar through a friend of hers who owned a music store. And it turned out after he got the guitar, he was kind of more of an acoustic player, so the guitar remained in unreal condition. It had been played, but it really had not been hammered hard at all. It was totally original, untouched, had the flat wounds on it from the 1960s. The original owner died 30 years ago, and she held on to the guitar all this time. And finally, she was downsizing, she was moving out of her house, and she just decided it was time to sell. So I was very honored to buy it. Thank you so much, Velvet Joe. I loved that guitar. It sold so quickly that I wasn't able to get more footage back at home of it. So I posted a couple pictures of it, but yeah, that was an incredible guitar. But so is this one. This is from 1941. It's a Gibson Super Jumbo 100, and I went on a guitar safari out to Missoula, Montana to buy this one from the original owner, the daughter of the original owner. As far as we know, she didn't have any documentation. The only thing that we had were a couple of pictures of her dad playing the guitar in the, looks like early to mid 1960s, and her son was kind of dancing along next to it, and so I met him and his mom and bought this guitar from them. So that was a really exciting guitar safari. That was before I had my cameras, so I then again had it on Instagram, but was not able to get a YouTube video out of it. And this one has finally come back from repair, so I'm super excited to show it to you guys. So Gibson debuted this guitar in 1939, and the catalog called it a Super Jumbo 100. A lot of people shorten it to SJ-100 or even J-100 these days, and so did Gibson later on, but at the time it was a Super Jumbo 100. That was what the catalog called it. So it was essentially a stripped-down version of the SJ-200. So it's a 17-inch wide flat-top acoustic guitar with mahogany backing sides, compared to, at the time, the SJ-200 had rosewood backing sides, and then later on after the war had maple backing sides. So mahogany body 17-inch Gibson is a very rare guitar. Very few of these made. So there were two versions of the SJ-100. This is version 2 from 1941. The first version had a stair-step style headstock, very cool design, but very difficult to make and time-consuming as well. It also had a 26-inch scale-length neck, which is a very interesting feature for Gibson guitars. They usually stuck to 24 3/4, which was the standard Gibson scale, and then the advanced guitars, the larger guitars, would sometimes have 25.5-inch scale, which is similar to a Martin scale length. But the first version of the SJ-100 had a 26-inch scale length. It also had a mustache-style bridge, kind of like the SJ-200. So that was the first version, made until 1941. When they updated the model to version 2, they increased the price to $125 instead of $100. But version 2 has kind of a wider headstock, no stair step. It's a 25.5-inch scale-length guitar, and it also has more of the batwing style bridge instead of the mustache bridge. So this is probably an easier bridge to make than that kind of fancy carved out mustache bridge. Surviving Gibson catalogs indicate that the guitar was discontinued in 1942, but that may be a few more shipped in 1943. But after that, there were no more SJ-100s until the early 1970s, and by then it was a totally different instrument. It wasn't the same thing at all. So as far as pre-war 17-inch mahogany guitars, the surviving shipment records from Gibson indicate there were about 138 of these made before World War II, which is just incredibly low number of guitars because they're incredibly great sounding guitars. So it's surprising that they made so few. It's probably had something to do with the price point and the target market. Seems like it was maybe a little too expensive for your kind of average player, but not quite fancy enough for your super high-end buyer who was going to go for that SJ-200. Just kind of fell in a weird price point maybe. So 138 examples made is far fewer than Gibson's advanced jumbo guitar, which is a far more expensive vintage guitar. There were about 300 of them made, a little bit less than 300 we think, and only a few more than the also far more expensive SJ-200 pre-war guitars, the Rosewood instruments, which were about a little less than 100 made. So 138 examples of the SJ-100 is a very rare instrument. So I flew out to Missoula, Montana to purchase the guitar, and upon inspection, I found the guitar was completely original and unmodified, unrepaired, and in good condition, except for a couple of things. I could tell that they had updated the tuners to the single-line white button 3+3 Kluson tuners in the mid to late 1950s, but all the white plastic buttons had shrunken and broken off the tuner buttons, so I couldn't actually play it. I could tell that the neck angle was pretty typical for a vintage Gibson guitar that had not had a neck reset. It needed one. There were no cracks in the body except for one next to the fretboard, since the pick guard had kind of shrunken and lost mass and kind of pulled a crack there. That's pretty common as well, and I could tell it needed a bridge reglue and some fretwork as well. So I shipped it back to myself, and when I got back home, I took it over to Jason Burns. He's burnsrepair.com. Been working with Jason for about 10 years. He does all the repairs on my acoustic guitars and pretty much all my guitars. But yeah, so he did a neck reset, a bridge reglue. He carefully removed the pick guard, addressed that crack next to the fretboard, and then reglued the pick guard. And so we were trying to figure out what to do with the frets because there was really no wear on the frets past the 4th fret or so, since pretty much everyone was playing in the kind of first 3 frets. So what I did, I had a 1941 Kalamazoo guitar, also made by Gibson, back at home, and it just needed too much repair. It was probably never going to be fully repaired. So I had Jason extract the first 3 frets from that guitar because the profile of the fret matched almost exactly this SJ-100, and then had him install those, replacing the first 3 frets on this guitar. So you can see there's some wear on the fretboard, but the frets themselves are actually in great condition, and the guitar plays great. Just feels like a nicely broken in neck, but also has good fret height, so it actually plays really nicely. So I'm super excited to play this guitar for you guys, but first, let's check out the book recommendation for Gibson flat-top guitars. It's Gibson Fabulous Flat Tops by Whitford, Vernopal, and Erlewine. This is an awesome book for reference for all the different Gibson flat-top models since the 1920s or so. So if you've kind of seen like a Gibson J45 out there and seen the slope shoulders and been kind of grabbed by that, I totally agree with you. That's exactly how I got into vintage guitars. I actually started with Gibson flat-top guitars, and this book was definitely one of those points of learning and just passion growing of Gibson guitars. But it goes through the models throughout the different years, kind of lists changes and adjustments to all the models, and kind of helps make sense of all the different model names like J35, J45, J55, Super Jumbo 100, SJ100, SJ200, J200, which, yes, the SJ200 came out as the Super Jumbo 200, then the SJ200, then was listed as the J200, and the S was dropped. So this book will help you out with that kind of stuff. It also gives production figures. Super cool, great pictures of classic players playing really valuable vintage Gibson acoustic guitars. Has a lot of cool information on the SJ-100 as well. So you can pick one of these up for yourself. There's a link below to an Amazon listing if you'd like to get one. I recommend it. I think you'll dig it. It's one of my favorite books. One of the earliest vintage guitar books that I got was this one right here. It's Gibson's Fabulous Flat Tops. So pick one of these up for yourself. If you want to see more pictures of this one, hit it up at truevintageguitar.com. There is going to be a link to this listing and 50 or so high-res pictures, including pictures of the underside of the top, at truevintageguitar.com. So go check it out. Here's what this guitar sounds like. All right, I'm gonna tune it and then see what it sounds like fingerstyle. Oh, it's beautiful. I love the sound of this guitar. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is the 1941 Gibson Super Jumbo 100. It's now available at truevintageguitar.com if you want to check it out. There's like 50 pictures there. There's a link below. Pick up for yourself a book, the Gibson's Fabulous Flat Tops book. I think you're going to love that if you like this guitar. Thank you so much for watching. Hit subscribe if you dig this video. I'm going to be bringing more of these videos all the time. Vintage Gibson, Fender, Martin guitars, amplifiers, even Martin amplifiers, hopefully, if I get one. So anyway, thank you so much for watching.